Hi there, curious people. Welcome to another edition of Curious People Wanted, a program by the Barnum Museum in Bridgeport, Connecticut. My name is Adrienne Saint-Pierre, and I'm the curator here at the Barnum Museum. One of my favorite things is learning about the artifacts in the collection, learning the many stories they have, discovering new ones, and then now I'm able to share them with you through this video series. This is a carved marble head copying Charles Stratton, better known to the world by his stage name, General Tom Thumb. Now, it was made from a life cast that Charles had done when he was only 19 years old, so 1857. And it was made to become a cemetery monument. Not that he was expecting to die soon, but of course, you never knew in those days when there were near as many medical treatments and medications as there are today. He had this done when he was 19. Apparently it was an uncomfortable process for him having the life cast made. And then this was installed a few years later. He bought a plot in Mountain Grove Cemetery in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1865. And so his monument was installed then, although he himself did not pass until 1883, quite a few years later. There's a Barnum story with this, of course, because there always is, and that's to do with Mountain Grove Cemetery. It is a beautiful cemetery on the western border of Bridgeport, right near the town of Fairfield. When Barnum came to Bridgeport in the 1840s, and he built his first home here, Iranistan, in 1847, 48, he realized that there was a need for this brand new young city to have a proper cemetery. Up to this time, up to the Victorian period, people, they buried their departed family members, loved ones in what were called burying grounds, usually adjacent to the church that the family attended. And often over the years, these burying grounds were quite neglected places. In the Victorian period, the idea came about to have cemeteries that were like beautiful parks. And these would be places where people could stroll and have fond memories of their friends and departed loved ones and just enjoy a lovely atmosphere. So they were landscaped with flowering trees and shrubs and all manner of very elegant plantings. So Barnum had the idea that Bridgeport needed to have a cemetery like this, and he and other people worked to create Mountain Grove Cemetery. If you go to see Barnum's grave, the monument there and other family members buried there, you will also see the Stratton family monument. Charles was buried there, also his wife, whose grave is only marked wife. Now you're telling me, okay, Adrienne, why do you have the head that was supposed to be on the monument in the cemetery? And that's another interesting story. This monument was a large rectangular block on which there was a very, very tall shaft. In the 1930s, people noticed that there were cracks developing in that long shaft that supported the figure of Tom Thumb. And they thought, wow, if we let this go any longer, this whole thing could just crack and the figure will fall to the ground and it could be destroyed. So we had better replace it. And that's what they did. They took the figure down, they took this shaft down, and a new one was built to replace it. I have some photos of that. As you can see, it's just a few feet high on top of the big block, the base of the monument there. So all was well and good from 1937 until 1959. And one day, vandals got into the cemetery and they wreaked havoc. Many, many monuments were damaged, and Charles's was also one of those. The next day, the cemetery people found this figure of Charles on the ground. The legs were broken, damaged various parts of the figure, but there was no head. The head was gone. They searched everywhere. They got other people to help with the search, and nobody could find the head that belonged to the figure. So time went by, a couple of years, went by. They figured we're never going to find the head. So we better have this monument restored. So the Mountain Grove Cemetery Association and the Barnum Festival Society raised money from the public to do that restoration. They hired a sculptor from Essex, Connecticut to repair the figure and to carve a new head to place on that figure. They also hired the Barnum Monument Works to replace that base with a much taller one, which you can see here, got good contrast with the tree behind. So you can see how much taller this new one was in comparison to the one that had been put there in the 1930s. Of course, the idea was that raising the figure up high, like it was originally, would keep it from being vandalized. And here's a photograph of the restored figure with the new head. Okay, well, there's more to it than this. This is a little bit of a Huckleberry Finn story. Two young teenage boys from Fairfield decided that they were going to build a raft one summer day, and they were going to take their raft down the Rooster River. The Rooster River is just a little tributary to Long Island Sound, and it marks a border between the town of Fairfield and the city of Bridgeport, and it runs along one border of Mountain Grove Cemetery. So these boys were on their raft, and one of them noticed something in the mud. Must have been prominent enough that it caught his attention. So the boys were curious, and they, I guess, scraped away the mud and found this head. I can't imagine what they thought. They might have thought, oh, this is a skull or something at first. But they pulled it out of the mud, they took it home, and perhaps their parents then remembered the story from 1959 of the lost head of Tom Thumb. The result was the head was returned to Mountain Grove Cemetery Association. By then, of course, the monument had been restored with a new head. The boys had found this original head in 1971. The restoration had been done in 1961. So this was missing for about 13 years, and I like to point out that this artifact tells a bit of the story itself. It was in the water all that time, and you actually can see sort of the lines of wear that the water produced from constantly, lapping against the head. So it's an interesting piece, and the Cemetery Association was kind enough to donate it to the Barnum Museum so that we could preserve this artifact and occasionally display it. It's now mounted on a marble base, which is part of the reason it is so heavy. This is a fascinating story, I think, and we're glad to have Charlie with us in this form. I hope you enjoyed this story. I look forward to seeing you again on a future episode of Curious People Wanted. Please subscribe. See you next time. Thanks.